All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time to join today's webinar, Why Google Cloud for SAP and Financing Your Cloud Migration. We do have everyone's phones live, so if you don't mind just muting yourself to block any background noise, that would be great. Just a few housekeeping notes. Our presenters will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. You can type them in at that point. Otherwise, unmute yourself and we can have a live dialogue. If we don't get to your questions, we will answer them or follow up with you directly afterwards. And then another just quick note is we are recording today's session and a link will be available on Managecore.com. So now I'd like to introduce today's presenters, Frank Powell, who is President for Managecore, and Senior Solution Architect, Nick Militich.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kristen, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Real quickly, just to kind of talk about what our agenda is, as Kristen mentioned, what we want to do is highlight some of the benefits of running SAP on the Google Cloud. And Nick will go through some of the technical details of why GCP is a great solution to run your SAP environment in. And then we also want to talk about some of the financial benefits that Google has today, because I know one of the challenges when you think about moving to the cloud or making any kind of a major change to your SAP landscape, the cost to do so is always in question, right? So Google has some great financing terms specifically for SAP workloads. So we'll go through that, have some examples, and demonstrate you know what that would mean, and do some quick math to kind of give you a view of what that would look like for a landscape. So just real quickly, who Managecore is. So Managecore is an SAP consulting company. We specialize in technology-related activities around SAP. So for those of you familiar with SAP, kind of the basis administration role in support of SAP landscapes. So Managecore is not a functional partner. We don't do op development. We don't kind of do functional type consulting, but everything from the basis and security level down. So we've always done a lot of work with infrastructure and networking and hardware, which has led ourselves to becoming the Google partner in supporting SAP workloads in GCP. So 100% focused on SAP. All of our customers run SAP in some form or fashion. Having said that, we will support other workloads that are in the cloud. So if you're thinking about maybe moving an entire data center and SAP is one of those items, we can help you develop a plan to not only migrate SAP, but your entire landscape. So we support customers kind of across the board of all SAP products. So regardless of what the product is or even where it resides, yeah, even today, about half our customers still have on-premise SAP environments, but obviously we're talking to many of them about moving to the cloud. So today is going to be very cloud-focused and very focused around GCP specifically. As far as SAP on GCP and Managecore's kind of positioning of that, we were very early adopters in the support of SAP on the Google Cloud. We moved one of the very first SAP S4 environments to GCP about 2 years ago. We've adopted a lot of the new technologies that Google has come out with. We've done a lot of the programs that one of the things we're going to talk about too, some of these financial programs. So we worked through a lot of those with customers. So we understand them very well inside and out, and can help you navigate, you know, how to best leverage those programs in support of a migration to GCP of your SAP landscape. So with that, let me introduce Nick Militich, and Nick is going to walk us through just some of the technical benefits of running SAP in the Google Cloud. So Nick, go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. So as Frank mentioned, my name is Nick Militich, Senior Solution Architect here at Managecore, and I'm going to go into a little bit of detail around why Google Cloud for SAP. Now I'm going to start with what makes Google Cloud different. And I'm sure as you read marketing material and try to compare all the different clouds, everything kind of seems similar and seems that everyone has some of the same technologies, but I can assure you that Google Cloud truly is different. One is best-in-class security, right? Google Cloud offers a lot of different products that focus solely on security. And not getting into them into too much detail, but within the Google Cloud platform, you can actually have different mechanisms to monitor and maintain your environment and make sure that access is restricted to only individuals that require it. Then getting into security from an architectural standpoint, Google Cloud is encrypted in transit and at rest by default. So there's no extra add-ons that you have to do to perform any type of encryption of your data. It's always encrypted. Hybrid and multi-cloud options also exist in GCP. Not only can you have your standard SAP environment in Google Cloud Platform, but you can connect externally to other SaaS solutions, other SAP offerings that are software based, and Google Cloud also allows you and has partnerships with other cloud vendors to allow and enable connectivity, such as IBM, for example. Then fully managed no-ops. So very, very easy to use GCP and very easy to configure and maintain. SAP landscapes can be installed within minutes, not days, via scripting. And Google Cloud makes it really easy to do. A lot of the scripting is already pre-canned for you, and you can just go run it and have a SAP HANA system up and running in an hour. Next is AI and ML. Now, as we all know, Google is the leader in AI and ML and has a lot of different offerings that can connect directly into your SAP environment, such as BigQuery. SDA access has been configured and is available to connect directly to your HANA database with BigQuery and run analytics almost out of the box. And then, as always, the best of Google, right? The culture and technology that Google has to offer is second to none. They're always innovating. They've had a lot of experience on the technical side, deploying really net new technologies that are unique in the industry, and I'll get into a little bit of those as we move forward. But they have done an excellent job in making technology available to their customers, either via development within Google or acquiring additional partners. All right, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about SAP on GCP advantages. So really three main advantages. The reliability of GCP is what makes this platform unique. Migrations, and it all starts with getting your environment within GCP, but the migrations, they're very seamless. And Google offers products such as Velostrada to migrate your entire workloads within to GCP automatically. HA and DR, which I'll get into a little bit, are simplified as well. A lot of technologies and their network backbone is really what makes Google unique. And then business agility, right? Because Google is 100% virtualized, the ability to scale up is minutes. And it's very unique in the industry because a lot of the larger SAP HANA environments specifically in other clouds, they require physical hardware. And Google is the only player in this space to allow 100% virtualized environments. And Frank will obviously get into the billing aspect of it, but the agility to scale up and scale down is really unique within GCP. And then really the business value. From an SAP standpoint, between having your SAP environment in GCP and allowing it to connect to a lot of different products in the Google Cloud Platform, it allows you to really take your company to the next level. We have a lot of clients that once they move their SAP environment and workloads into GCP, they started continual development of other products and really business innovation with IoT, with machine learning, and with analytics. And now I'll kind of go into a few details specific to SAP. And before we get started into that, I just want to make sure everyone sees what is supported. Google really supports almost every product that SAP has to offer. They've certified it with SAP, so whether you're running S4 or BW4 HANA, business objects, PI, the whole NetWeaver stack's really supported, and a lot of different databases. So maybe you're not on HANA quite yet today, but maybe you're on SQL Server or ASC. We can support that within GCP. And then they really support all the main virtualized platforms such as Windows, Red Hat, and SUSE. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on why GCP is really purpose-built for SAP. The first and foremost thing I'm going to talk about is GCP's live migration product. Basically, live migration allows you to move your environment in the event of maintenance. And this is all done on the back end. This isn't something that you have to turn on. Google offers it as part of its standard processes and procedures. And basically what live migration does is twofold. It really allows you to have as close to zero downtime as possible within a zone. And it also takes the guesswork out of Google's maintenance within their own data centers. Live migration will move your environment without any downtime in the event that Google needs to patch physical hardware or replace physical hardware. Live migration will move it. So on the client side and on the SAP side, you're never going to have an outage for that. And you're never going to have to know or understand that Google's patching on the back end, because live migration takes care of it for you. And really what it does is in a single zone, it provides you HA. So in the event that something fails, what happens then is it gets brought up in that same zone within minutes. I've had it to where my monitoring tool sets almost don't even detect the fact that a system went down and back up because it was so fast. So live migration really helps with providing a very, very robust platform to keep your systems running 100% of the time in GCP. The next area I'm going to talk about is the private network. And I can't stress this one enough because a lot of the different clouds out there will talk about HA and DR specifically as it relates to the private network, but it really doesn't come into play, or you really don't appreciate it until you try to configure HA and DR in other public clouds. So the private network in Google's entire backbone is private, and it is completely their own network. And what that does for you is it allows for extremely low latency. And what that means is that you can experience different configurations in HA and DR that you normally can't either on-premise or in other public clouds. As an example, when you're configuring HA between two different zones, it's just inherent, right? The two zones are connected via their own private network, and the latency there is so low that it's just, again, inherent. You can do HA between two different zones in a single region. In other clouds, you'd have to configure that. The latency between other zones and other clouds don't allow for that to happen without certain configuration to take place. And you have to think about it, you have to architect it a certain way. In GCP, it's just done for you. And the private network also allows for a lot more global and regional resources than any other cloud. So subnets, IP addresses, VPCs, all of that can span in a greater breadth of area than other public clouds. And the private network also allows for other situations such as VPN tunnels, HA VPN, which is unique to Google as well. I can actually aggregate VPN tunnels, which allows me to instantly increase bandwidth. I can actually take a VPN tunnel, combine it with multiple ones to get faster bandwidth in a pinch, or let's say I'm doing a large data transfer and I need it for 4 days, I can do that in GCP. And the pricing model, I won't go too much into detail. I won't steal Frank's thunder on this one, but there are different pricing models within GCP, right? And the main ones are sustained use discounts and committed use discounts. And now recently added as a few months ago are SAP bundles. So basically, a really great way to price out and scale your environment without having to make commitments that you necessarily would from a technology standpoint, but then get pigeonholed into certain servers, right? GCP doesn't do that. Google will actually let you commit to certain CPU and memory, and that'll allow you to move your workloads however you want. If you have 5 servers today and you wanted 10, but you want them to be half that size, you could do that, right? As long as the CPU and memory is the same, you could mix and match as much as you want, which is very, very unique in the industry, and GCP is really built to allow for that. Next slide. Okay, so I know we touched a little bit about security, but data is encrypted in transit and in transit and at rest. So nothing to do when you launch in GCP, it is inherently there. In other clouds, you would have to go and configure that, and sometimes there are extra products. Flexible resources. So one thing GCP allows for is the ability to actually make custom image types. So you can change instance types, you can make custom memory to CPU ratios, and they even support that on HANA, which is very, very unique. Normally, you would have to have a certain HANA appliance for running SAP on HANA. However, in GCP, they've certified the ratios, which means that I can actually make custom image types and actually make it to exactly what the specs I need instead of overcommitting on the resources I'm purchasing. Redundant backups are another unique feature, where in other clouds, you would have to run scripts to copy your backups between one region to another. GCP, because it's their own network, they've made it seamless. You don't have to actually go through this and configure this within GCP. There's multi-regional cloud storage. So basically, what that means is I can take my backups, I can write them to this multi-regional cloud storage, and it is inherently replicated between multiple regions. So by default, just by writing my backup to certain disks, I can actually have a very cost-effective DR plan, right? I can have my backup go right to multi-regional cloud storage, get replicated to another region, and have the ability to restore it there if I wanted to. And that kind of ties into the HANA backups as well. GCP was the first provider to offer backend technology with HANA. Now, the big thing about backend is that it allows me to write HANA backups directly from HANA to that multi-regional cloud storage as an example. Generally, what people used to do is attach additional disk to your instance types. And what would happen is you would write backups to that disk. You'd have enough to store maybe 2 days worth. And then you take a script and you write that backup up to cloud storage, and then you delete it off of the OS. You don't have to do that in GCP. GCP allows you to get rid of that disk. You don't need backup disk in the same fashion. So you're saving costs there. But I'm automatically writing backups directly to cloud storage and directly replicating using multi-regional cloud storage. The other benefit of HANA backups using backend with GCP is the ability to throttle it. I can actually tune and customize backends to go faster than traditional backups. And what that means is I've seen backups and restores. Most recently, I've seen a 500 gig database restored in less than 20 minutes with HANA using backend calling directly to multi-regional cloud storage. So again, the speed and agility at which you can write these backups to, and the agility to have redundant backups is very, very unique to GCP. Next slide.
Sorry, Nick, I need to click once more time. There you go.
All right. And a few other areas here. The virtualization, as I mentioned before, Google's the only provider that's 100% virtualized. So you don't have to worry about going to physical hardware. You know, it's the point of going to a public cloud such as GCP is the fact that you should be able to spin it up where you want it, when you want it. And it's all virtual, right? You can use the same technologies that GCP has to offer across the board. While other clouds went the physical route, GCP is definitely committed to virtualizing every single environment. Big data integration. So SDA connectivity, smart data access. right into between HANA and BigQuery is huge. For anyone not familiar with Smart Data Access, instead of doing my traditional BW loads, what I could do now is actually run a report, but using SDA, run it real time and pull data from BigQuery, pull data from HANA, and run that report together without having to load data, preload data. You see the BW standard nightly loads. If you're running SAP BW, you can actually skip that, and you can just pull data directly from BW or from ECC and pull data directly from BigQuery and concatenate it and come up with your report on the fly. So very powerful stuff there with big data integration. And I know I touched a little bit about the cloud storage, but also persistent disk. There is multi-regional and regional persistent disk as well. So I can replicate across that same region versus just replicating to a single zone. And what's unique about that is that it's not relegated to a single data center, right? My data is inherently redundant. And not on here on the slide deck today, but Elastifile, which was recently acquired by GCP, can also be used for multi-zonal and multi-regional replication. Now, the benefit of that is that I can do true HA across zones. I could replicate data across zones and across regions. And really that technology allows me to run higher workloads and not just flat files, but I can actually run databases, things of that nature across multiple zones. And I can replicate that across multiple regions, which from a disk layer, it's almost like having a replicated SAN environment, across many, many data centers, which allows you to do unique things such as HA across two physical data center locations. So a lot of great technology that GCP has to offer that, again, on the surface, everyone claims to have similar products. However, GCP has them and they've put them into practice, and you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to make this work. It is inherent to GCP, and that really is the beauty of running SAP on GCP, is that everything just works. They've made it so it's not a complicated process, which is a great thing in the SAP world, because SAP could be complicated in itself. But GCP has made it very simple to run SAP in their environment. Next slide. I think that's the end of my section about the technology. Now I'll turn it over to Frank to talk about the financing aspect of migrating to GCP.
Great. Thanks, Nick. And just a couple comments on some of the technology. For those of you who are very familiar with SAP, or maybe have done administration of an SAP environment, or have had to deal with temporary systems, project systems, high availability, disaster recovery, hopefully some of what he just talked about was resonating on the challenges you've probably had in the past. And whereas he says these are just inherent features now to make things just totally seamless. The story I always like to tell, and Nick always tells me, I'm going to anyways, when we put that very first customer into Google Cloud about 2 years ago, it was our first foray into the cloud. So we wanted to test DR, right? We wanted to test every DR scenario we could. And we did something like 30 DR tests in 3 days. And that was standing up a base environment. And then, we try to do a hot backup, a cold backup. Can we roll the fault logs forward? What happens if it crashed? We did that. And my technical team was amazed that they did 30 iterations in 3 days. And if you think about on an on-prem environment, to start with a base image of an SAP server and try to do DR 30 different times, how long would that take you, right? So just one example of how flexible it is when you get to GCP, and some of the things that we can do once you're there. So the second part of our presentation today is we want to talk about some of the financial incentives that Google has, specifically around SAP workloads. And one of the things that everyone realizes, Managecore, Google, and everyone in the industry, right? There's a lot of challenges that businesses are facing today, whether that be disruptions in your industry, not to mention just the global problems that we're seeing today. It's an ever-changing kind of business climate. Maybe you have different competitors. Maybe you're trying to stay competitive. But all of that usually comes back to affect IT in some fashion, right? So to get predictable about what your IT requirements are becomes very challenging, right? What you thought you might need, when, if you think about buying hardware for the next 3 to 5 years, who really can build a plan for 5 years and sticks to it from an infrastructure standpoint, right? So we understand that the business world is very dynamic. IT has to be flexible with the business itself, which means you're strategizing, and that strategy may change several times over the course of a year, right? So you need an environment and a computing environment that can be as flexible as your business is, but that is still cost effective, still secure, still meets the needs of whatever compliance issues you may have and everything else. So understanding those challenges, I think Google has not only developed the technology, but also has some business plans to help SAP customers move forward. So this value proposition is really based around those concepts, right? Of agility, being flexible, being able to maintain costs or manage costs, and then have insights into innovation and what's happening. One of the things that we have found very interesting for the customers that we have moved to the Google Cloud is about midstream through the project, they already started down the path of what is going to be our next project once we're live with SAP, meaning, is it going to be a big data project? Is it going to be an analytics? Is it going to be something with machine learning, whatever? That slide on FFF, they're a very unique business. So they were spending a lot of time maintaining SAP and putting a lot of energy and effort into it. And it was sitting in a private cloud initially. So they knew they didn't have the time, the energy, or the funds to do any innovation because they spent so much time just maintaining the current environment. So once SAP got moved, their distributor flu vaccines, and they have embarked on a project where they're going to do IoT to every refrigerator in every doctor's office that holds vials of vaccines. And it's not only an IoT project, it's going to be a big data project because they will be able to track now every vial of vaccine, where it went, which nurse took it out of the cooler, which patient got it, and then they can run analytics and obviously a lot of information about that process, and not only to track those medicines all the way to the patient. So just one example of, by freeing up some cost and resources in just day-to-day maintenance, they were actually able to innovate and truly add value, not only to their business, but to their customers, being patients and doctors. So a great example there. So there's a core value proposition that we're trying to propose to these businesses and figure out how do we adapt this to your unique needs. So SAP is calling this their business continuity approach, understanding these business imperatives, right, of needing to reduce costs, reduce risk. Staff now has changed. A lot of people work from home. There are hardware maintenance challenges. There's access to hardware. There's capital costs versus operating expenses. Maybe you're in a third-party data center. Maybe your data is still on-prem. So people are starting to ask themselves, okay, I know I have current challenges, but what does it take, and how do I get from A to B, right? And many times when our family takes road trips, our joke is, well, you can't get there from here. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can always get to GCP some way or another, right? So no matter where you are today, we can get you there. Interestingly, we still have customers that run SAP on the AS400. And those customers, we're talking about, how do we get you to GCP? So if that isn't a testament that anything can be done, I don't know what is, but it's possible, right? So if you're on Oracle or any other DP or a database and you want to go to the Google Cloud, there's also many different forms of migrations. I think Nick mentioned that for FFF, that was a straight migration. So they were already on HANA. We actually used a tool that just migrated the virtual machines from the current data center to GCP, and did that within 12 weeks. We have another example. I'm going to have a slide here in a little bit, but another customer that was running on AIX and Oracle in a private database, in a private cloud, and we migrated them from Oracle to HANA all in one process. So just about anything can be done. And again, these benefits are very wide ranging, but for the sake of today's conversation, really looking, how do we reduce OpEx, maybe eliminate the need for capital expenses altogether, reducing risk, and increasing insights to your business. So what are some of these programs when you really want to think about what is the financing of this, right? So Google has some very unique programs to help SAP customers migrate. And at a very high level, and again, there's more details to this and we'll be happy to talk to these, but at a very high level, basically they're offering up to 30% of what the 3-year spend would be with GCP, right? I'll have an example, so we'll go through this in more detail, but up to 30% of that 3-year spend to help pay for the migration itself, right? So real quick math, if you're going to spend $1 million over 3 years with Google, they're willing to give you up to $300,000 to help you migrate, okay? So that's what that math works out to be. The other part of this program is they'll pay for the first 6 months in credits, because let's say you're already in a private cloud or another hosted solution, to help you alleviate the need to double pay, right? So those ramp up costs as you're getting ready to migrate your productive system, let's say it is a 6-month project, right? So they're giving 6 months worth of credits to offset not having to double pay for the current data center and GCP while you're in the middle of the migration project, right? So those are the two big financial incentives. And then I always want to mention, and they are very competitively priced, because when we talk about these kind of incentives, people immediately say, okay, yeah, but as soon as then I'm live, am I paying more in the Google Cloud than others? And the answer to that is absolutely not. We have priced out multiple cloud solutions, and Google's prices are very, very competitive, many times cheaper than the other hyperscalers. And Nick touched on a little bit that their pricing model is the most flexible, with the sustained use discounts, the 1-year committed use discounts, the 3-year committed use discounts, the SAP bundles. All of these things actually give them a really strong edge on the pricing when you start looking at what your ongoing month-to-month fees will actually be. So on the right here is just a sample of, if you looked at what your current costs could be compared to after a migration. So this is kind of pre-migration, post-migration, what the new cost would be, what those monthly savings could be in this example, about $15,000 a month. If you multiply that times 36 over 3 years, that's like $540,000. And if you add on that, in this example, that Google would pay for the migration, so the migration virtually costs you nothing, pretty compelling argument. And this number of 23% savings is what we're seeing specifically when you're in a private cloud environment. If you're on-prem, it might be a little bit different. If you're in a colo, it can slightly be different, but this is something that Managecore can actually help you walk through. But 20 to 25% savings over a current private cloud environment is very typical of the savings that can be achieved. So a little bit about SAP bundles as well. So what Google has done is said, hey, there's some kind of standard configurations, and we also tend to call this kind of t-shirt sizing, right? Kind of that small, medium, large type systems. And what this is these numbers that are being represented here for like a small environment, it's $8,000 a month. Behind it, there's a whole list of virtual machine types that are included in that bundle, networking, disk, some cloud storage for backups. There's a whole list of things. So I didn't list them all, obviously, for each of these, but there's a whole laundry list of what resources are included in that bundle. If you buy it in the shape of a bundle, you actually get a few more % discount over what a standard 3-year committed use discount would be. So if you buy bundles, you're actually kind of getting the best long-term discount you can get virtually from any cloud provider. So that's what these represent. You can also mix and match bundles, because clearly no one's going to their SAP environment's not going to neatly fit into one. So let's say your environment is kind of an extra large plus a medium, or it's 2 mediums or a large and a small. We can combine multiple bundles together to make up what we be the equivalent of your SAP landscape. And we've thrown some just quick from Managecore, just what some of the managed services costs might look like in that same bundle. And then kind of the Google capital investment, which is the 30% of the 3-year spend plus the free ramp up of services, right? So again, we could talk a lot of detail about this slide specifically, but I think the message we're trying to convey is Google is trying to get really creative to give people kind of the best pricing process we can for your SAP workloads, make it simple to understand, and yet also here, these aren't things that you get locked into, right? Because some people say, well, what if I'm a medium, but I need 2 more servers? Perfectly fine. You buy the medium bundle, those 2 extra servers we provision, and we put those 2 extra servers into a 3-year committed use discount, and you're still getting very good pricing that way. So this doesn't really lock you into a certain configuration by any means. It's more or less giving you, I guess, t-shirt type sizing for different type of landscapes. Okay. So I wanted to break down this financial example a little bit more detail because I want people to really, this is to me a very compelling program that Google has put together for SAP customers. So in this example, this is kind of what I would say is representative, kind of a medium size SAP landscape. Maybe something that's 4 or 5 different products like ECC, BW, BobJ, PI, Fiori, things like that. Maybe this is about 60 servers. And again, these are all estimates because, you know, is this a 4 terabyte HANA appliance or is it a 2 terabyte Oracle database? So, but you get the idea. So for kind of a medium-sized SAP environment, let's assume that monthly GCP spend would be $40,000 a month. So over 3 years, that total contract value would be 1.4 million, right? So the way the calculations on these rebates work, it would be 30% of 1.4 million, which is $432,000. So that number alone is what Google would contribute and pay to help you migrate your workloads in your SAP landscape into GCP, okay? In addition to that, the 6-month ramp up would be paid for. So 6 months times $40,000 is $240,000. Now, obviously, day 1 of the project, we're probably not spending $40,000. So it would be the actual ramp up cost for that 6 months. But we're just using this to make the math simple. So all in, Google's total contribution to help you migrate to the cloud would be $672,000. Now, a couple questions that come up when we talk through this. Well, what if the migration is pretty simple and it doesn't really cost $432,000? Well, there's a couple things we can do. Let's say, just again, to keep the math simple, let's say the migration, we can just do a lift and shift. Let's say you're already on S4, you're already all on Linux, and all we have to do is copy those VMs from your current data center into the cloud. So that's a very easy process. So let's say that migration maybe only costs $200,000. And then you say, well, there's $232,000 left over. Well, 2 things we can do. We can do we can convert that extra amount into infrastructure credits, right? So you can get a little bit of more infrastructure credit that would help you pay for the infrastructure a little bit longer than 6 months. Or let's say there's other transformation of your SAP landscape that needs to occur at the same time. Let's say you're running S4, but your BW system is still on Oracle. Well, we could also use some of those dollars to move from BW on Oracle to BW for HANA as part of this same project, right? So the thing I think is great about the way Google did this is they kind of look at this and say, hey, we've kind of said we would commit up to $672,000. Kind of tell us how we need to use that to get you into the Google Cloud, and we'll get creative about how to use those funding, right? So the math works out depending on whatever that monthly GCP spend is. The math kind of works the same. We can get creative about how to use those dollars depending on given your situation. But I wanted to be clear about how this math example works and how these promotions are actually being implemented. Okay. And I will have some time at the end for questions. So hopefully you have some about this particular slide because I want to make sure that that's clear. So the last thing I did want to talk about is one of our customers that's actually taken advantage of these programs, and the customer is called Distribution Now. They're in the oil and gas business. They actually are one of the main distributors of the oil and gas industry for everything industrial, anything from drill bits to piping to nuts and bolts and everything in between. So we started working with them back in 2019, and they were another case where they were sitting in a private cloud. They were having some performance issues. They weren't getting great support. They thought they were overpaying. And at the same time, even before, the events of 2020 last year, they were seeing changes in the oil and gas industry and knew they needed to keep looking at IT and technology to keep themselves competitive. So again, very common theme that based on what they were spending today for SAP, they were trying to lower some of those costs so they could actually spend more on innovation. Fortunately for them, they started this project about 10 months ago, right? So in the process of this solution, they were a perfect example. They were on AIX and Oracle. So part of the funding that Google provided helped them migrate to Suite on HANA. We moved them to GCP. That funding actually not only paid for Managecore to help do the physical migration, but SAP Services actually was doing some of the application remediation because of the HANA migration, right? So again, just proof that migration rebate can be used in multi-fashion to multi-vendors depending upon what the actual target system needs to be to help you get that migration done. So, and again, it paved the way for them to then spend time on doing other innovation and other projects within their data center. So some of the core outcomes of this project, and they went live just earlier this year, but they are seeing a 4 times performance increase on many of their reports. So I know for a fact their BW loads are running twice as fast, just those themselves coming out of ECC into BW, for example, right? They have already started a analytics project using BigQuery. So as I mentioned earlier, all these customers are looking to do extra things. So they're actually already thinking about how do we use BigQuery to get better analytics and be more efficient for their customers and stay more competitive in their business. They also have greater peace of mind because of the stability of the Google Cloud and the support that Managecore is putting forth in supporting that SAP environment. So now 24/7, 365, they have a much more stable, higher performing environment. And to me, one of the more exciting things is they've done all of that and they're going to save over $1 million in the next 5 years, right? So if you think about the outcomes, all the positive things that have come from this and saving money in the process, pretty rare opportunity for IT departments, right? Generally, many times IT is thought of a cost center. If you want to do anything in technology, it costs you money to get there, and you try to sell the business value down the road in years 2 and 3. Yes, it's gonna help you. Here is a program that literally can start producing financial benefit for you literally almost right out of the gate. So that's the story about DNOW. So that's kind of the end of the slides as far as the information goes. What we did want to talk about is kind of what can you do for next steps, because I think these are really compelling programs that Google has. So, step 1 is this contact Managecore, right? We can help you down this path and very quickly just give you some ballpark numbers and need just some very basic information about your SAP landscape, right? Because a lot of this is going to be driven about really how big is the footprint that needs to be moved into the Google Cloud. So simple things like the versions of the products you're running, including the operating systems and databases, how many systems you have, and then also kind of what are your HA and DR requirements, because obviously if we're building, true HA systems, or you have, complex DR requirements, and everyone's are a little bit different, knowing what that is actually can have an impact on the overall GCP spend. But with some of that basic information, we can take that back and we can give you kind of a preliminary quote in 1 week. And from that, you can tell us, hey, does this make sense? Is this something you want to move forward with? And from there, then we can get into maybe a more detailed proposal and talk about what a migration plan looks like, what's the timeline, give you a very specific proposal on the pricing for not only GCP and the migration itself and ongoing managed services. So that is the bulk of our presentation today. And with that, I would like to open it up and see if anybody has any questions. And if you're on mute, feel free to just take yourself off of mute quick and jump in.
Well, as we're waiting for some questions to come in, thanks again, Frank and Nick. That was a really great webinar. I loved all the side stories as well and examples. That was fantastic. So if anyone has any questions, you can chat them, unmute yourself. Feel free to ask away.
Yeah, so Frank, I have a question. This is Raghu Singh with International Paper. Do you have a standard template or a form that that you utilize where you can say, okay, this is provide us information in this format and makes things easier?
We do. Yeah, so all of our support model is pretty standardized along this, and we can actually forward some of that information to you. The reason we can kind of turn on these quotes pretty quickly is because we've done so many of these at this point. There is a lot of standardization around a lot of what we do, not only in our managed services, but actually in the cloud configurations, because what we see is trying to standardize some of these things around the Google Cloud and taking advantage and leveraging their security models, their best practices as well. So we can produce some of that stuff. So I can, Kristen, I think, do we have his information, at least contact info that we can forward to him?
We'll be in touch.
Yep.
Thank you.
I also just want to say, we will obviously have the whole slide deck available too, but some of our contact information. So if you did want to have a follow-up with either a question or a comment or give us a call, we're happy to answer any of those questions as well. One last parting word, especially on the financial incentives, they are slated for 2020. These are 2020 programs that Google has put together. Is there potential for them to go into the following year and things like that? Don't know. So all I would say is if these are intriguing in any fashion, I would say, contact us soon and let's at least work through what some preliminary numbers look like and see if this is an opportunity for your business and in moving your SAP workload. So.
That sounds great. I had a few questions that throughout, we did a virtual series now, and we've kind of had a few questions continue to come up. So one of the questions, Nick, if you're still there, is in a typical lift and shift from a private data center to Google Cloud, what is my expected downtime?
Sure. So lift and shift can have a few different variables, but if you're looking to use a traditional SAP lift and shift where I have to do a migration of a database, maybe I'm going from Oracle to HANA, your downtime could be 12 hours or something of that nature, maybe a day. It's usually done over a weekend. If you're using tool sets, and FFF is a good example of that. When we migrated them, we preceded the environment with tools. So really, we were done with the whole migration in 4 hours, and for production, and it was multiple systems. And the flip over was, in a half hour, we had it from one data center to another. So it could be as quick as a half hour or minimal downtime to, 24 hours. It really depends on the technique.
Excellent, thank you. And Frank, I know you covered a lot of this too, kind of throughout the presentation, which I appreciate, but the long-term benefits that we've seen on Managecore customers that actually now are running in the cloud, as well as have our managed services helping them. Any other points of them?
Well, yeah, the two big ones, and I've mentioned them both, are one, the financial aspect of this, right? I think every customer we've moved into GCP, they are saving money over what their monthly spend was prior to going to the Google Cloud versus what it is now. Is I think 100% they're saving money. The second thing is the stability and the uptime. They are having the ability to do innovations that they never were able to do in the past because, again, not only the cost savings allows them to do that, but freeing up their internal personnel resources, right? They have people that now have time to do other things. The other thing that I think is a little bit lost too is the efficiency factor of doing things, again, for the SAP folks, for doing a client refresh, for doing your DR test, to stand up a separate system because, hey, we have a third-party product we love to load, but we don't want to put it in dev or QA. Can we stand up a separate server off on the side and test this? In our world, you can have it tomorrow, right? Versus I have to provision some hardware and I have to make some room So some folks that are already using maybe VMware on-prem are probably close to that kind of timing, but there's a lot of people who aren't. So the speed and the agility to do things in your SAP landscape, I think most of our customers are also come back and said, wow, this is so refreshing that we can do things so quickly to keep, again, their projects moving forward in a timeline that they've not been able to experience in the past.
Sure, and that goes into our consultants being that dual trained, right? They have both the basis side, I would say, right? I mean, our senior consultants, and then we also have all the cloud certifications as well. So I think having that relationship or that pairing of people managing your systems has been really beneficial for our customers.
Yeah, that's probably worth noting is what we've done is we've taken the approach where our basis consultants we have trained in the cloud technology, so they're kind of dual certified, that they have SAP certifications and cloud certifications. Now we have very deep kind of specific cloud architects as well and network engineers. But when it comes to standing up a server, like if you wanted to build a separate server for a project, our basis team can go build that server for you. We don't have to put in a request to the data center team, and then the data center team has to put in a request to the network team, and all of a sudden 3, 5, 4 days, 2 weeks, whatever goes by, and finally have a server, right? Because although the tools are unique, they're fairly straightforward once you know how to use them, right? And what we've done is, so we've built a framework for each of our clients, which in that virtual private cloud that our consultants have the authorities to do the necessary work within each of those security areas. So so that time to resolution, time to delivery, and everything is very, very low for the way we operate it.
Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Again, we really appreciate everyone attending today. The webinar has been recorded. A link will be made available to everyone, as well as on our website, managecore.com. One other thing I wanted to note is if you still have more questions or want to hear more from Google team as well as Managecore, we'll be hosting another webinar on May 21st. It'll be hosted by Google and featuring Managecore, and we'll be talking more about modernization of SAP in the Google Cloud, and again, the 2020 incentives to migrate now and seamlessly and easy. So again, we really appreciate it. Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Nick. Great webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.